Welcome back. It's Stephen Haberman, aka Pin Daddy, your pinball fellow that likes to say hello. Welcome back to The Pins We Play. And this is episode 3 with Harry Jackson. Harry Jackson will be talking about Super Mario, the pinball game from Gottlieb. Now, this is not the Mushroom World, which was a smaller redemption-based game that was taking that would give out tokens. This is Super Mario World, the pinball game. So some interesting things about this game will obviously be, it's a well-known game. So he's a video game fan. I am also a gamer. So I want to talk to him a little bit about, does it meet the needs of what you were looking for out of that game? Also, it gets a bad rap, so I'd like to hear a little bit more about the game itself. And finally, he actually had this very unique experience with Charles Martinet that brought to light some new information about the character of Mario and how early Charles was voicing him. So hopefully you enjoy this. This is episode 3 with Harry Jackson on Super Mario. It's the Gottlieb pinball game. Enjoy. And hello, everybody. We are back with talking with owners. We're talking with pinball owners about the pinball games that they own, that they've collected, and the games they've decided to add to their collections. And today we're talking with Harry Jackson from Southern Jersey or South Jersey pinball players. I've seen some SJ stuff pop up on high scores. Harry Jackson, if you've seen us on Twitch, you may have seen him before. He was the winner of the Star Wars launch party tournament, and has since. We didn't stream the latest thing, but we just had a high score tournament for charity in which Harry beat my high score. So I came in third, actually, and Harry came in first. But here we are. Here's Harry Jackson. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. There was a theme there, though. I think it was on Star Wars again. So I think as long as we just do every tournament on Star Wars ever, I think I'll be great.
That's
Hear that,
fine.
Bowen? Greenberg. Just all Star Wars.
Just all Star Wars. Just no one will be mad about that.
Not at all.
So we're not here to talk about Star Wars, though. Hey, you never know. It's just a chatty show. But today we decided that I wanted to reach out to you, Harry, because you're a friendly pinball guy that I've run into at Pinball Gallery and Pin Crossing, some events in the in greater Philadelphia area, and you had told me that you own a Super Mario pinball machine.
I do. It's actually the very first machine I ever bought. This was, I'm kind of new to competitive pinball. This was March of 2017 that I went to go get it, so a little over a year ago. And this is my very first machine in my collection, so it's very special to me, and I'm really excited to talk about it.
All right, excellent. So for those of you that don't know, I'm also kind of newer, and the reason for this podcast and the reason for this series, whatever the heck I end up releasing it as, will be to give you an opportunity to say, I don't know anybody in the community, I don't know anything about these games, where can I go to find out about owners, find out about why they bought it, who they are, what they like about it, what they don't like about it, what a search for a pinball machine is like, what costs are like, how do people buy them, like all of these crazy things that you maybe have never considered until you finally say, you know what, I want one. That's what we're doing here. So let's start off with, Harry, you said you started in March 2017. This was your first game. So what made you decide that you wanted to own a game, and how did you come to the decision that it was going to be Mario?
Well, I was one of those kids that grew up with pinball in arcades, and I think there's a lot of stories that start out in like bowling alleys and old arcades, and it was a similar thing for me where my dad bowled in a bowling league, so once a week he would bring me along, to watch him and support him, and I would just end up in the arcade the entire time. So there was no cheering for Dad going on. But ever since growing up with pinball, and seeing it out in the arcades, I didn't know that there was this collector community that you could bring the roller coaster home, so to speak, and play it every day in your own house until I got much older. And then when I came upon Pinside and the pinball collecting community, I started thinking about, well, gee, I'd really like to own a game. And then you look at new in-box prices, and you see that they're $5,000, $6,000, sometimes all the way up, depending on the limited editions and all that. And I thought to myself, there is no way I'm going to pay $5,000 for a game. I want something much lower in cost. But, being the late 80s, 90s kid that I was, I also wanted a DMD, something that I was used to and that I grew up with. So trying to find a DMD in the under $5,000 range kind of put me in a limited window. And that's when I started going to Pinside and looking around and putting the parameters in the searches. And, again, this being my first pinball machine, I wasn't really keen to ship anything either. So I was looking for something local to the New Jersey area, and, just kind of limiting my search even further. So searching Pinside one day, I saw a post from someone in New Jersey, in Livingston, New Jersey, which is about 2 hours north of me.
Okay.
And they were advertising this Super Mario Brothers machine. And, this kind of hit me in two areas. One, the pinball area and being really enjoying pinball. But then also, I'm a huge Nintendo kid. And I grew up on Mario games, especially, more than the Zeldas and the Metroids and everything out there. I was a Mario kid first. And this just kind of hit me right in my wheelhouse. So I said, you know what? I need this game. But being new to pinball and new to the hobby and new to Pinside, I didn't realize that there's a 24-hour probationary period before you're allowed to post or send messages. So I registered Pinside right away. As soon as I saw it, I jumped on the forum thread, and there wasn't much I could do. So that 24-hour waiting period when you're thinking about your first game and it's like the only thing that's going through your head while you're doing the hunt and the search, that was rough.
Oh my gosh. I will tell you that is not something that crossed my mind as you're talking through, like, this is my first game, I found this on Pinside. I'm thinking of, like, all the different, like, oh, well, this guy's gonna, the price will surprise you, he lied about the distance, or, like, he might just be at an event that day. Well, you think of all the random things that could happen for the first time. Oh my gosh, I am so impatient. Just to imagine, I'm like, I've got it. Mario pinball machine, and then see it there, see that he's asking for it, and all you want to do is literally contact the guy and go, yes.
Yep, exactly. And to compound matters a little bit further, the poster was a new to Pinside user as well. So how Pinside kind of gives you that warning flag that, hey, this person just created an account, be on the lookout for scams. That flag was posted about this user who was posting the Mario. So I said, oh man, what am I getting myself into? I don't know very much about this hobby, and here I'm going to try to negotiate and buy a pinball machine. So in the thread, I have to give a shout out to a Pinside user, Jay Kasahani, I think is how you pronounce it, but he's a northern New Jersey Pinsider who actually offered to go check out the machine for anybody who was interested, who was coming from a distance away. And I actually, once my probationary period was up, I reached out to him and I asked him just for some general advice. I wasn't really sure, what should I look for? What are some things to be aware of? And he kind of helped guide me through the process. And while I was talking to him, I was also talking to the seller, and we were going through the negotiation period. And I don't know about you, but the negotiation part is some of the most stressful. When you have a pin that your heart is set on and you really want to go grab it, but at the same time you're kind of trying to make a deal, that can be some really, really stressful times.
Now, for those of you that don't know, obviously Pinside is kind of a Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. These guys are posting, and they're posting a price. Sometimes they're posting like that or best offer. Sometimes in the post they'll say, trades considered. Now, if this is your first pin, obviously you do not have a pinball machine to trade this man. And sometimes they say like trades like they want to trade rather than cash. So the post is like for trade, not for sale, and it'll say for trade, but here's the monetary value they put on it because they had to put something in. So now, did he be open about wanting to trade? Did he say cash only? How far off were you when he had a price and you had a price? How far did you have to go to meet each other in the middle?
We were only off by a little bit. He didn't have any trades, and I later found out it was because he was getting out of the hobby altogether. This was his only machine,
okay.
And he was just looking to downsize, get it out of his basement. But we were only off by a couple of hundred. At first, it was a pretty big difference because we were trying to kind of negotiate and meet in the middle.
Yeah.
But after a while, it got to the matter of where there was a $200 difference between our prices, and I think at the end, I threw in the towel. I said, and I think everybody does this on their first pin. They kind of overpay a little bit, but I just wanted it. I really, really wanted a pinball machine. I wanted my first machine. I was starting South Jersey Pinball League the following week, so I kind of just wanted to. I jumped into this hobby with both feet, and I wanted to get in and get it. So we eventually agreed on a price, and I agreed on a time, and we made the 2-hour trip. My father, my girlfriend, and I in his pickup truck, and we drove up there. I think I watched every Todd Tuckey video I could to learn how to break down a pinball machine and how to move it, and all the ins and outs of Mario and the machine itself to try to learn if there were any hidden tricks. It was just that excitement of a first pinball machine. I love it, and every time I've gone to pick up a machine since, it's kind of been that same kind of Christmas morning feeling to it, that you just get that excitement.
I totally understand that. I think that's one of the things that some people don't understand about the hunt, which is really when even if you've made the decision, it's ready to go, you've set a date, that morning. For me, for Christmas morning, even now as a 30-plus-year-old man, I wake up early. I'm the first person awake in my house, and I now have a 3-year-old. I've got to wake her up to tell her, it's Christmas, get up, Santa came. So I totally understand that idea of oh my goodness, this is real. This is going to be mine, and on this day, at this time, I'm going to go get it. So it sounds like, one of the other big things when it comes to this hobby is that it sounds like you had a great experience having that shout out from the Pinsider who, may have gone to look at it for you, or at least gave you some pointers. And you had a little army with you. You had your father and your girlfriend. Now, walk me through the pickup, drop off. Did you have the materials necessary to move that thing from where it was into your car, or did the buyer? What did you realize you didn't have? Did you run into any issues, and did you get into the house without a problem?
It was pretty smooth. I will say this: it was my first ever pinball move. My father, my parents had never owned pinball machines. Nobody in my family, so we were going on my YouTube knowledge alone to figure out how to break this machine down and move it successfully. So when I got there, I said, well, gee, I hope this guy knows sort of what he's doing, so maybe he can guide me through it if I'm doing something wrong. Well, we get there, and first of all, I have to say the pinball hobby is so interesting because it's one of the only ones where complete strangers will just invite you into their homes without any kind of background, or you could be a stranger off the street. Come on into my basement, it's fine. Come on in, come play my games. So I love that about the hobby. I think it's awesome, but it's also probably pretty strange to anybody who's outside of it. But we kind of made the Craigslist jokes on the whole way up, gee, I hope that this is legit. I hope that we're not just going into some stranger's basement and something horrible will happen. But luckily, nothing like that happened. The gentleman that we purchased the game from was super, super friendly, super nice, and I went to work right away. I brought my socket set, and I brought sawhorses, and I brought foam. I think I might have overpacked because I brought everything in the kitchen sink just because it was my first pickup, and I didn't want to forget anything. I didn't want to leave anything at home. But
I like to make sure. I'm going to pause you right there. I like to make sure that when you say something that I don't know or I don't think someone else will know, it's good to point out. So one of the big things is a socket set. Now, obviously, and maybe not obviously for everybody, but a socket set, you're talking about a drill or drill bits or a wrench set that is going to allow you the ability to unscrew the screws that are into the legs, the head, wherever the screws are, to make this thing where it stands. Because don't forget, for those of you that are newer to it, like there's 4 legs on this machine that you can take off. You don't have to put it in the back of your car with the legs on, and the head can fold down.
Folds down
for the most, for more recent ones or DMD ones. But you said sawhorse. I don't know what the hell that is.
They're little support stands that you can set up, and you can make kind of a makeshift workbench on them. They're just like little legs. They fold. They're like little plastic. They sit about.
No, you're talking. Now I know what you're talking about. So you're talking about the ones in which you would generally put up like for a workbench outside, kind of like a makeshift workbench. So yeah, just a stand that you unfold. That's meant for, you more often see with guys that are handy construction work, guys that are doing work outside in their yard, cutting wood and what have you. Okay.
Right, and I wanted to spare, my leg or whatever. Some people can rest them on their legs and just go from there. But I said, no, let me get a support system here so I can take off the legs successfully and get it up on its back. And it's funny because the gentleman I bought it from, he had this machine for about 13 years, he said. And he said that whoever he bought it from set it up for him. So he had no idea that it all came apart like this. So as I'm taking the machine apart and taking the pieces off, he's kind of, shocked that it all comes apart and folds together like this. So I know when I initially got there, I thought, well, maybe he'll know more than I do about the machine, but it turned out to be the opposite.
That was not the case.
No. And one other thing that happened, and I don't know how often this happens on people's hunt for a pinball machine, as I was playing it and testing it and then decided I wanted it, I purchased it, and then I started packing it all up. The seller started getting very nostalgic and talking about how his kids used to play it, and I was very worried that he was going to just renege on this entire deal and take away my hopes of a first pinball machine. Just because of listening to the way he was talking about it, he was just like, oh, we really had some great times with this machine, and I just really wish, we could play it one more time. I was like, you can play it right now if you want. I'll just put the legs back on. It's fine. But no, luckily it didn't come to that. But I thought I'd have to pry this machine out of this man's hand.
That's great.
I started packing it up.
I bet you now, like for collectors that have a large amount of them, I imagine like that might come up. But with one, it's like I bet you that was a lot harder for him. If he's had that for 13 years, it's his only machine. He decided to back out. He's also thinking like this thing is going to be a horse to move, and you folded it up all nicely. He's probably thinking, it's like, man, this doesn't take up as much space as I thought. I could probably store this somewhere. Look at how small this gets. You know what? Maybe this guy...
Can you just set it back up for me? Here's your money back. Just kind of kick me out the door. But no, it was once we got it folded up, I quickened my pace a little bit just to get it wrapped up and into the car. But it was all great. And he actually ended up throwing in some extra bulbs and some other extras that I didn't think of. The manual, he had the manual with it, which was great. So it couldn't have been a better first pin experience on all the way around.
Great. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And it's nice to know, like, for one, that having the sawhorses, like, that's a big thing. When you're taking off the legs, like I talked about, like, hey, it's good that you had an army. It's good that you had 2 people with you that could have helped you put that thing down. And the fact that the previous owner didn't really know that, he probably wouldn't have been a whole lot of help. Maybe could, carry it a little bit, but not necessarily. Because that's one of the things you also have to, like, not take for granted. It is possible that the person who's selling this is saying, it's you deal with it. It's in my basement.
Oh, yeah.
And it sounds like that's kind of your experience because you had to move it out of his place. But
yeah, quite a bit. And I was worried about nicking anything in his basement as well. I didn't want to hit anything on the way out. It was just trying to make sure that, we were as careful as possible moving it out and all that. We also brought us a hand truck, which
Yep.
is important, to have with you, especially these Gottlieb System 3s. They're a little bit heavier, I think, than most machines. The straps, we brought ratchet straps, which were very important, and we also brought some foam, which you find they sell it maybe by the piece for like garage flooring and things like that, foam that you can stand on. We brought that just to wrap around the straps to make sure that they weren't injuring the machine on the edges.
Sure.
And also for the back box.
So when the back box folded down on the playfield?
Yep. So that it didn't dig into the support rails.
Yep. So that's all supportive. So some of the things like coming out of your experience, like you had basically everything you needed with the socket set to take it apart, with the foam to protect the back glass and protect the wrap. When you wrapped it with the ratchet or ratchet straps rather than, some people use packing wrap or pallet wrap, excuse me. And you had help. You had a dolly. Dolly was it the like just blow up wheels or like hard wheel?
Hard wheels.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right, nice.
Yeah, but once we got it over to the truck, it was just really easy to just kind of keep it on its back and then just kind of flip it up onto the truck and just slide it forward from there.
Nice.
Like I said, it was 2+ hours away, and we were concerned about weather at the time because it was overcast, so we made sure we got a tarp and made sure to wrap it securely under a tarp. And I'll tell you what, that 2-hour trip, this must be, I don't have children of my own, but this must be what having a child and bringing it home from the hospital is like, because every bump, anything, potholes in the road, I'm turning around, looking into the back of the cab of the truck, make sure that that's still in the same exact spot as we put it in.
With a 3-year-old, I'm going to tell you, and also a pinball collector myself, children a lot lighter. Coming home from the hospital, they're real. You just put them wherever you want.
Pop them down, right?
Just pop them down. Just one hand, you two. You can have the car seat. It's all much, much easier.
My dad was like, I'm going to give you something. You just have to relax. I'm going to give you like a sleeping pill or something. I don't know. Every single bump. I'm like, you're going too fast. Can you avoid those bumps, please? I just paid money for that. That's my baby.
All right. Well, so you get it home. Sounds like you had no problems really setting it up. Once you have it up and running at home, any problems in the onset of playing the game? Did you notice there were any issues? Were any known issues when you bought it? What was kind of up with that?
So there was one known issue, and it was that every so often the ball trough would eject 2 balls at once, and it would confuse the machine. The machine would, as soon as one of those drained, the machine would end your ball, and it would be over. So I spent quite a bit of time. At first I posted on Pinside, hey, does anybody else have this issue? And a couple folks said to check the coil sleeves inside the machine, make sure that they weren't too powerful. It wasn't the wrong coil. Okay. Because what I noticed was the kicker in the trough was kicking the balls out, and then it would ricochet against the other balls that were in the trough and hit that kicker again. And the kicker, thinking that it was, hey, the ball drained, I need to kick the ball back out, would kick the ball out a second time, and that ricochet would cause a second ball to go out into the drain. So it was almost like it was kicking it too hard, and that ricochet was causing the problem. But what I noticed was there was a ball trough gate that the balls were just kind of bypassing. They were going right through it as if it wasn't even there. And I tried to buy a second gate, and that didn't fix the problem for very long. It fixed it temporarily, but not very long, until somebody on my Pinside post recommended getting a spring, like a flipper spring, a small spring, to put on the ball trough and the gate that ejects the balls. And it actually holds that gate tighter than what I had originally, and it makes it so that the balls don't fly back into the kicker. So that was how we solved that problem, but that was one that was an issue from the outset.
And I have to say, with it being your first game, knowing that there was an issue and having it go as deep as I had to custom piece a part to make this thing work the way I wanted it to, that's pretty rough. Like, I mean, it's not that bad of an issue. Like, when you just kind of like all the things that could be wrong. Well, none of the lights turn on, or none of these things work. But that sounds like a pretty significant issue to kind of like run into in your first go round. But I'm glad to hear that you were able to get some support. And again, just posting the pin side, asking the questions to the folks that would know. Usually, you're going to get some help. If you don't get any help, do quite a bit of Google searching or pin side searching. You'll end up finding quite a few answers there.
Right. And then, in the course of the things that I've done to the machine, I caused some issues where I actually was trying to take the upper playfield off. There's a secondary upper playfield in the back of the machine, and I thought that there were just these post screws that you could just unscrew with a screwdriver at the top, and it would pop right out. It'd be fine. I ended up snapping the screw because there's a substance called Loctite underneath of the playfield on a lot of Gottlieb machines, and think of it almost like glue. It's like a blue substance material that really holds that post on very strongly, so you can't just screw it out normally. So I snapped the screw, and I found out that for Gottlieb System 3 machines, your go-to resource is a company called PB Resource. I don't know if you've used it. Steve Young's company, PB Resource.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I found out very quickly about PB Resource is, they're very old school. You either have to order the parts over the phone. They do take email orders, but, you need to kind of go through a catalog and make sure you have the part numbers down and everything like that. So I did all the steps. I prepared myself a script to have ready because I heard that I heard that Steve can be a little bristly on the phone, and I this is me first machine. I broke something on my first machine. I'm all upset. I call Steve and I'm explaining to him what happened. And I said, I was loosening the screw and it snapped on me. So I need 2 or 3 more of these screw posts. And I got a lecture from Steve that was basically saying, we only have so many of these original Gottlieb parts left, so please, please, please don't just willy-nilly unscrew posts on your board because this Loctite. He was the one that taught me about the Loctite.
Sure.
So it was all in good education. Mm-hmm. But if you're not used to that kind of a personality on the phone or in the hobby, you may take it as some sort of admonishment or something based on what you were doing. But no, I think all due respect to Steve, he was great, and I got my new posts, and now I know that if I want to take any more posts off the game,
and now I know,
heat them up a little bit with maybe a soldering gun, and you can loosen up that Loctite and get them out of there. So
I have a System 1. I have a Gottlieb street level game. So that's System 1 or System 3, one of those two. And I've seen that blue Loctite stuff. Yeah. And I can't say that stopped me from taking any of the screws out. And I'm not 100% sure I didn't break a lot of them. It took them out. I just hadn't considered it because I'm doing a full playfield swap. And sure enough, every decal, every plastic, and the whole playfield that I just had clear coated is from Pinball Resource. So I did not directly buy it from them. I got it from a guy who bought it from them. But that's good to know. I hope I don't have to call Steve.
just have your part numbers ready and be ready for a mid to stern lecture.
Listen, Steve. I've already got the you're talking to from Harry. I'm a same boat. I didn't know about the Loctite. I need these parts. That's pretty good.
Say, I'm very, very sorry. I know that there's only so many left in the world. I learned my lesson. Never happen again.
That's good. Well, hey, you got a lesson that's going to help you going forward.
Yep.
All right. So you've had, you said you got this March 2017. So talk to me about the game itself, the Super Mario. Now, there are 2 Super Mario Gottlieb pinball machines. You're talking about which one?
I'm talking about the full-size blue cabinet, version. And you were right, there's a one called Super Mario Brothers Mushroom World, which I think came out a year later. And it is a smaller half-size cabinet. It's yellow, and it's much rarer than this machine. That one, there's only 300 of them that were ever produced, and they actually came with a really neat feature where the legs can adjust for children. So you can have a machine that's kind of half the height, so kids can play. And it was also set up for ticket redemption. So it's a pretty neat game. If you see it out in the wild, definitely give it a play because it's a rarity. And I don't know how many of them are still out there and around. Whereas this one, there were 4,200 of them that were made. So it's much more prevalent out there in the wild.
Okay, so you've got a Gottlieb full-size Super Mario pinball machine. Talk me through kind of how that game plays. What are some features of the game? What are some of the things that you enjoy about playing through the game? And for the Nintendo fans, tell me what Gottlieb does that Nintendo don't.
Well, I'll pose with a question to you. In Super Mario Brothers, the game, what is the goal of the game? In almost every Super Mario Brothers
you
game.
gotta go through those pipes and beat Bowser.
Yeah, and rescue the princess, right?
Yep, that's
so
right.
It's pretty much the same here.
I'm sorry. After years and years of saving her, I'm so frustrated with her having it caught over and over again. I'm like, no, I just got to defeat Bowser. If I save her,
at some point,
fine.
You gotta wonder, right? Like, is she like just leaving the back door open? How does this happen over and over again?
I'm really interested. Have you played? And we'll get into more Mario stuff maybe later. But have you played Odyssey?
Yes,
all the way through.
I love Odyssey. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I feel like that the end of Odyssey, and we won't. We'll spoil it later. but like it made me feel like that finally felt like an end that made sense to me versus like the classic. Oh, you finally found her, and there she is, and there you go.
Right.
Until next time.
Until the next game. Until Odyssey 2.
Yep.
So I think that Gottlieb and Nintendo did a really great job here of sort of recreating the classic Mario experience by you go through 7 castles, which is kind of strange because usually in Mario lore there's 8 castles. Yeah. But you go through 7 castles and you have to destroy the castles to save the princess. Yeah. And in order to destroy a castle, you have to become Super Mario. So you have to spell super throughout the playfield. Now, you can get S, U, P, and E using the upper left flipper shot, where there's actually 3 flippers on this game. Okay. So there's an upper left flipper shot that will continue it to a small ramp, a green ramp that will take it around to your right flipper, and that's how you get through those letters. The R you have to spell by hitting one of the 2, they call them gobble holes. There are 2 holes in the playfield on the left and right sides, and that's how you get your final letter.
Now, I want to stop there because those holes are substantial. In comparison to and I think of like a kicker, or like a just a kick. I guess it would be called a kicker hole or something along those lines, a kick out hole, where it's just kind of like an indent in the game where the ball will rest and then get kicked out, and that's a faster experience. But Gottlieb chose to have it be just a hole through the playfield to which the ball is falling through. And we'll get to that a little bit later, but I wanted to make sure I paused to express that these are not kick-out holes. These are just these are black holes to which the ball escapes from the field of play from.
Yes, the ball disappears from your view pretty much, especially that right hole. And for the unsuspecting player, it may be pretty surprising that happens. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they're very essential to the game because you need them to spell super. And super can do quite a few things. Now, this game gets a bad rap for being pretty easy and pretty simple. And I'll explain in a little bit that it isn't a very good tournament game. But it is deeper than I think a lot of people give it credit for. Okay. So, when you're in this super mode, the lights are flashing, the music's going. They use music from Super Mario World, which had just come out the year before in North America, which I think is really great. All the sound effects, all the music comes straight from the game. And there's actually your left side out lane kick save is activated. And there's also a little shield that comes up in the drain, so your ball can't go straight down the middle. Now, your goal in super mode is to hit the ball into the back castle hole, which is there's a rotating plastic castle that's spinning and flashing, and there's a gobble hole under that. You have to hit it in that hole before you either hit that kick save or the middle drain. If you hit either one of those, it'd be the same as if Mario takes damage in the game, where he goes from being Super Mario to the small Mario. So, you know, you do have to kind of think about, okay, where's the ball? Do I have to do a save here in order to stay super and keep it in that mode before you hit it into the hole? So that's one of the objects of the game.
Okay.
There's also 6 modes in this game. And you can start a mode by collecting. There's turtle shell shots that alternate through the playfield as the ball hits the slings, and you hit these posts, or you can hit the ramp, and you collect these turtle shells. And once you collect the turtle shells, you can start a mode at one of the mode start areas.
Okay.
And each of the modes have different playfield rules and mechanics. There's a super bumpers mode where your bumpers are 1 million a hit. There's a Yoshi countdown area where you have to hit a target on the upper playfield very quickly as it's counting down, and you can get big points that way. And each of these modes, the scoring can be doubled if you take super into it. So you kind of want to think, if you're playing for competition, you're playing for points, you kind of have to think, well, okay, if I'm in super mode, can I start one of these other playfield modes as well and get double scoring? Because especially with that Yoshi countdown, you can get some really big points out of that.
Huh, okay.
So all right, so after all of that, you can also start multi-ball. There's a 2-ball and 3-ball multi-ball in this game. You can start multi-ball by hitting, there are 4 shots on the playfield that are numbered, 1, 2, 3, and 4. By completing those shots, you can start multi-ball at the left gobble hole. It'll be a 2-ball multi-ball if you are not in super mode. If you are in super mode and you hit that gobble hole, it'll be a 3-ball multi-ball.
Oh, nice.
And
okay.
The jackpot shot is the castle shot. So, you know, that can be pretty tricky to do, because when you get into super mode and you get the 3-ball multi-ball, they're much more likely to hit either that kick save or the little drain shield in the middle. So you'll be knocked out of super mode. But the jackpots go from 5 million to 10 million to 20 million to then 40 million.
Wow.
And one of my critiques about the game is it's very easy to repeat the shot. So if you cradle the ball on your flipper, on your right flipper, and you cradle a ball on your left flipper in multi-ball, and you shoot that jackpot shot with your left flipper, it's going to go down under the playfield through the subway and then come out of the right gobble hole.
Okay.
The right gobble hole will kick it pretty safely to a cradled left flipper. So then you use the left flipper, hit that jackpot shot again.
Okay.
Comes to a cradle, hit the jackpot shot again. So, I mean, if you're very good with that jackpot shot, you can pretty much break this game by keeping a ball in the right flipper safely out of play and just using the left flipper to continually loop that jackpot shot.
Okay. So, I think you've given a good sense, at least a variety on some of the concepts of the game. I would, based just on the naming of the shots, the way the layout is displayed, and I'll show some video so that people can actually see what this game looks like. But would you say that theme is well presented on the Gottlieb machine? Do you think it feels like a Super Mario game?
Absolutely. I think that, you know, especially with the music, the sound effects from the games, there are concepts that you'll see that they use that are in the game. There's like, oh, get the feather. Well, that feather is a power-up in Super Mario World. Go find Yoshi. You know, Yoshi's a new mechanic that was brought in Super Mario World. So I think that, and all of the call-outs, I don't know if we want to talk about the voice acting and what we found out recently about that, but the call-outs are all throughout. This game doesn't shut up. So if you're a Mario fan and you like to hear Mario talking to you, it really it'll really keep you going. And there's also a voice actress that's playing the princess as well, and she talks to you. So theme integration, you know, it's definitely an A+ here. I think that they did, other than that missing 8th castle, I think they did a great job of integrating the theme.
And I know this from just having seen it a few times, but I would also say that I think they did a really good job using the DMD to present Mario in a way that felt in line with the games, while also being simpler because it's on a pinball machine.
Yeah, and this is Gottlieb's first DMD machine. So I think for them to be new to the DMD game and DMD animations, this is an A plus for them. There's actually a Super Mario, a rudimentary Super Mario side-scrolling game that's a video mode in this machine. Where you use the right flipper to run and the left flipper to jump, and you actually get extra points if you hold the right flipper and run throughout the entire thing. So it's deep. There's a lot to it.
So you've had it for a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Have you sold any games that you have since that you've purchased? So is everything that you've bought still in your collection? I know it's a short window of time, but
yeah. So after Mario, I bought 2 more games. I bought a Stern Stars, and also a Whodunit, and then I have a game that's out on location right now, which is Star Wars.
Oh, nice.
Funny enough.
Okay.
But they've all stayed in the collection so far.
Mm-hmm. So we'll probably have you back for Star Wars and possibly Whodunit. We'll see.
Sure.
Because those are, for one, Star Wars is kind of a game that I think gets a bad rap. As of late, this could release in 2020. I have no idea what year or month we're releasing this series. But whenever you're listening to this, Star Wars at its initial release wasn't well loved across the whole collection, and this one as well. Super Mario is not considered a game that when you tell somebody, you're like, you know what, the first game, I'm going to get my first pinball machine, and you know what I want? Mario. The first reaction I've seen is usually, no, you don't.
Yeah, I got that a lot too. It was like, oh, I got my first machine, and then everybody asked, well, what is it? And I said, oh, it's Super Mario Brothers, and I get this, ooh, I'm so sorry,
Exactly.
And it's, hey, I did. It was the theme that spoke to me at the time, and I will say this: out of all of the games in my collection, when we have family over, when we have friends over, non-pinball people, they go to Super Mario first. They gravitate to that machine, and they'll play that one the most.
Yeah.
Because of all the history and it being my first machine, it's going to be very hard for me to part with it, even if it's not the best for competition play or for tournaments.
So I'll share that my first machine was Comet, and I think it lasted 6 months. And there isn't a single game that I have owned that has lasted longer than 6 months. And that is more because I have enough space for about 3 to 4 machines, and every machine I have ever bought has been a part of the buy or sell of another. So I might have loved Mario, but if I wanted another game, Mario would have had to have left for me to bring something in. So I appreciate the fact that you've got a good small collection. You have Whodunit, Mario, Stars, so you have a variety of games from a variety of builders, giving you a variety of play. You have deeper, I would say a deeper game in Whodunit from a Bally Williams sense. You've taken a chance on a Gottlieb game, and you have Mario, which appeals to you as a theme, and Stars is a well-liked early Stern kind of a shooter game. It's a pinballer's pinball game.
Right.
And you even have something that, again, I have to assume you're a Star Wars fan if you have a Star Wars pinball machine. And that's
Absolutely.
another one. It has a great theme. So I think you've done a good job putting together a small collection of theme-based games that are appealing, as well as getting yourself something you can learn on with Stars that is just literally very hard and early enough that it's going to teach you the tools of play at both the kind of early game side as well as some of the newer mode-based hit these shots to progress type strategy as well.
That's what I was hoping for. I don't know if it's translated into results yet, but I hope so. I love Stars. I love Whodunit as well. Stars is just, it will kick you. It'll take your lunch money and laugh at you while it does it. But it's one of those I just have to play one more time kind of games, and I learned how to tap pass on Stars, it was great, and it's great to get used to the speed of those older games. And Whodunit is now teaching me multi-ball control and hurry up shots and things like that. So You know, even the other games in our collection have really helped teach me other aspects of pinball and helped improve my game, I think, in my opinion.
So you've had the game for a year and a half. You're happy and have a connection to Super Mario, as that pinball machine. If you were starting today and you were picking a first pinball machine, would Mario still be it?
I think so.
Okay.
You know, I think that question depends for other people, depends on who else in your household is going to be playing the game. Mario, for me, is great because of the family aspect. But, you know, to be competitive in pinball, I think it is a very tough sell. Once you kind of get that multi-ball exploit down, you've kind of broken the game. So, you know, if this is the only game in your collection and you really don't care about theme and you don't have a family that cares about theme or anything like that, it's just you and your pinball collection, I don't think Mario is the game for you. But if you are trying to get kids into pinball, if you have, you know, a spouse or significant other who's kind of leery about pinball but can get in on something that has a great theme, that's a pretty simple rule set, you know, it's really easy to explain to them, hey, spell super, hit the castle. And, you know, you're advancing. The castle progress actually saves between games as long as you don't shut the machine off. Oh. And the castle progress saves between players as well. So my girlfriend and I will say, hey, do you want to play some Mario? Let's team up and try to get to the end of the game. Let's try to get all 7 castles. So, you know, I think it really appeals in a household where you don't have serious competitive pinball players who can appreciate the theme as well.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that is... you know, obviously, like I was a gamer first. I did video games and worked at freelance for the games industry, and that's where I fell in love. But I was not a Nintendo boy. I did not grow up with Nintendo in my home. My first video game system that I was allowed to have in my home was like Sony PlayStation 1. But what I was also allowed to have was portable games. And so my very first console is the Nintendo Game Boy, and my very first game is Super Mario Land. So, nice. Like, I have an appreciation for, honestly, a one-tone Nintendo Mario game. So it's just like, oh my god, I'd be so nostalgic just for the DMD on that thing.
Right.
And it is colorful and playful. It aligns with the theme well. I think those, you know, gobble hole, those giant holes in the playfield are meant to make the game easier for people that are walking up to it for the first time. And as you said, anybody that doesn't play pinball is probably going to go up to Mario first because they're familiar enough with the theme to know what it is, and they're not going to have what I would describe as a Star Wars-like experience, where they don't really know what to do, what to shoot for, or you know, may struggle with just being onboarded for that game. All right, so we've kind of talked about the game. I think you've given some really good points as to, you know, for one, why pinball people may or may not fall into an interest in that game. Why the theme is solid and non-pinball players will come to it, so it's a friendly game. But if someone were to say, you know what, Mario is my game, based on this, you know what, I think I am going to buy it, is there anything related to owning that game that you've run into that are like significant system errors, anything that is technical that you need to be aware of, or anything that is dangerous about that game that you just want to make sure you express to a potential owner?
One of the first things that a potential owner or somebody who's looking to buy the game should watch out for is let's talk about those gobble holes. As you know, if a pinball hits a certain area of the playfield repeatedly, it's going to eat away at the surface and at the wood around that area. And the same thing happening for those gobble holes, especially if the machine is out on route somewhere. So, you know, you want to, if you don't know whether or not the machine's been on route, look at those gobble holes very closely and see if the playfield wood is starting to wear away as the ball goes around. And again, I don't think it's something that you really have to worry about as your.
Hold on a second.
I don't think it's. Oh, yep, no problem.
Something just threw me off here. Why is that? I just had a pop, like my whole screen just popped up over you.
Oh no.
let's go back to just. Could you start your answer again? I apologize.
Oh yeah.
At just
no
mentioning the gobble holes.
No problem.
Okay.
Just let me know when.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. So one of the first things you want to look out for if you're a new owner or potential owner is the gobble holes. Around those gobble holes we talked about. As you know, if you're playing pinball and the pinball hits an area of the playfield repeatedly, that metal ball will start to eat away at that soft wood underneath, especially if it's not clear coated or anything like that. Those gobble hole areas are very high traffic areas, and if the machine has been on route before, you want to make sure that the gobble holes are taken care of, or that the artwork isn't starting to chip away from those areas. It's something that if it's in your private ownership, you're probably not going to play it enough to wear away the holes that badly. But if it was out on location somewhere or on a route, you want to make sure that that those are in pretty good shape. If they are damaged in any way, or if you're a little unsure about it, actually the Cliffy company makes, or maybe it's just one individual named Cliffy. He makes protectors. I think
that's exactly how I describe it. It's it's Cliffy protectors. Cliffy,
yeah.
The guy.
Cliffy, right? Yeah, Cliffy. He makes protectors for Super Mario Brothers for those gobble holes that will protect those areas, so that way, in your ownership, in your care, they will be taken care of. Mm-hmm. One other area to look for is the trim pot on the board in the back box. Sometimes that will go faulty and short out. That's something I learned from watching Todd Tuckey's videos at TNT Amusement, and also something on mine that I've kind of been watching out for. If you get variance in sound levels and in the voltages back there, that trim pot will need to be replaced. It's a pretty cheap part, but it's just something to keep an eye out for. But generally, Gottlieb System 3s, once you get them up and running, they have a pretty good reputation of being built strong, and they'll keep you in pretty good working condition for quite a long time.
Excellent. So, well, that's good to hear. I'd also say, I've seen any time of that age, like games of the 90s from Gottlieb, anything that is not made like 8,000 of, ramps. There are some ramps and some unique kind of plastics in the playfield that may end up being a little bit more expensive to replace. Nowadays, things are becoming more common for people to rebuild and recreate. So maybe that won't be an issue, in the next year or so. But that's also something just to keep in mind.
Yeah, PB Resource, he had some for a while, and then if you look at that, there's a green ramp plastic that takes up the right side of the playfield. Mm-hmm. That plastic is out of stock, and I don't know, if there's a private seller that's selling them. But yeah, that's a very good point. The plastics are something to keep an eye out for. As I'm kind of looking at the pictures of the playfield, or at the cabinet, as they're kind of displayed here. Another thing to keep an eye out for is fade in the cabinet, especially on the yellow on the sides. Those yellow pieces, there's some letters of Super Mario Bros. Down the side, and also Mario's holding like this little yellow star. Those yellow areas are prone to fade very quickly. So if it was on location somewhere, sitting in the sun, you want to be careful and watch out for that as well.
All right. I was sharing. I will share with the viewers and listeners that I was sharing pictures of the playfield just to make sure we're both talking about the same things, remembering everything, without actually showing them on the recording. So I apologize for those that didn't see those there.
That machine looks totally unfamiliar. I don't know what you're
talking. So anyway, I want to thank Harry for joining me today for talking about Mario. Before you go, I want to have a verbal recognition that if you do plan to sell the game, I will be asked first before you sell it to anybody else, because needless to say, being a Nintendo guy and playing video games all my life, that's one that I keep an eye out for.
Absolutely. I will verbally commit right now.
All right.
Although I want to say it's going to be a long time before I sell this, especially because recently I found out that Charles Martinet, who has done the voice of Mario since 1990, actually voiced Mario in this machine. And for a long time in gaming history, it was thought that his first voice acting as Mario in an official Nintendo game was a educational typing game that came out in 1995. So this would actually predate that by about 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing some freelancing and some side work with Nintendo and some trade shows. So this would be pretty significant because it'd be the first quote-unquote game that he voiced Mario in for Nintendo. And I actually had a chance to meet him at the recent Too Many Games convention in Oaks, Pennsylvania. And I brought my translate with me to get signed. I was so excited because it had been bugging me. This machine didn't show up on any credits. The pinball database didn't show who did the voice work. The voice is unlike anything that had been going on for Mario at that time. There was a cartoon that was running at this time as well, and Mario had this like really gruff, deep Brooklyn accent.
Yeah.
So, this is the very bubbly, happy Mario that we're used to hearing nowadays. So I had to ask him, if I had this opportunity to meet him, if he did the voice in the pinball machine. So I showed him the translate, and he looks at it, and Charles Martinet is a joyful guy. He's almost like Mario personified. He's always doing the voice and everything. He looks at the translate, and I said, "Oh, do you know what this is from? It's from the Mario pinball machine." And he said, "Oh yeah," and his face kind of fell, and I was like, "Oh no, what did I do?" And he said, "Yeah, I did the voice. It was me." And I said, "Well, it didn't appear on your credits anywhere. I just wanted to see because I think this is a pretty historic, development." And he said, "Yeah," he said they never actually paid me for it. They actually stole my voice, and I didn't get any compensation for this, so that's why it's not in my credits."
Mm-hmm.
I said, I'm so sorry because I didn't know that story. It's not out on any forums or anything like that. So I said, I apologize. And he was such a good sport about it. He said, "Oh, no, don't worry about it. You didn't know." And then he signed the translate for me anyway. I was ready to kind of pull it back if it was like a bad memory or something for him. But he went ahead, he signed it. He had no issues. He was doing the Mario voice as he was signing it. It was great.
And now, honestly, Harry, you by having that conversation and making that public, I've seen that specific story on like 30 articles online in the last month. So I'm glad that you've had that conversation, and you did have it publicly enough that it's starting to get out there because, like in the same way that, Sandra Bullock didn't get a Demolition Man pinball machine, even though she was a star of that movie. It's like, well, maybe if they're giving them to the guys, they probably should have given them to the girl too. If Charles did the voice, he absolutely deserves the credit for that. And should be celebrated for the fact that he was a part of pinball history as well.
Yeah, and I'm a Nintendo nerd about that kind of stuff. So the fact that this is now the earliest game that we have that Charles voiced Mario, I think that's really, really cool. Not only for pinball history, but also for Nintendo history.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm a big Nintendo fan. I have a couple of like different Nintendo Mario statues and all the toys and all the World of Nintendo stuff that came out. This pinball machine came out at a time when Nintendo was very open with its IP. Like I said before, they were running cartoons. They were doing Happy Meal toys. They did this pinball machine. 1 year later, the Super Mario Brothers movie came out. And I don't know if you're the Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo, Dennis Hopper live-action Mario Brothers movie came out. And that movie was such a bomb that Nintendo became very restrictive with its IP until very recently. Only in the last few years did they start to kind of open it up again. So, to me, this machine kind of represents a time when Mario and Nintendo was sort of, right before that dark period in the late 90s where you really couldn't find very much in terms of Nintendo collectibles and toys. So, it's a very special machine to me, and as a Nintendo collector and Nintendo fan, it really holds a special place in my heart.
Oh, good. So I'm glad it's in your home, and I'm glad it's not going far or going anywhere for a long time, because like I have 4 games or soon to be 4 games in my house that have been bought in the last like 3 months, so I'm not in the market. But also, it's also neat to see, like, for those of you that see the video, you're like, hey, he's got amiibos all across the top of that room. You've got Iron Man. So we share. I have a poster on my wall of Iron Man sitting in the Iron Throne. So it's an Iron Man, Game of Thrones tie together. And I've got some, I've got Bowser and Duck Hunt behind me.
Yeah, I would take you to my Nintendo case, but the room is kind of a mess. I don't know if the
well,
audio would be very
we'll do geeky crib tours for some other series. But I want to thank Harry for taking the time to talk to me about Super Mario Gottlieb game. Came out in the 90s and now is part of your collection. So hopefully this was enough information for you to go off of if you're thinking about the game. Now you kind of know, hey, it's out there. There's enough of them out there that don't make it impossible to find, except for that Mushroom World one. That's going to be harder to find. Right now, Pinside says the value is about $2,300. I would say that that's low on what it's going for. It's going for about, I would say, on the high 2s to low 3s. Going rate currently mid 2018. Hopefully it falls to be a little bit more comfortable for somebody else, but it's something to keep in mind. So again, thank you, Harry, for your time today. This has been just chatting with owners, talking with them about their pinball machines, and we've talked about Mario. All right, so thank you for your time, and we'll be back next time, whenever the heck that is.
Thank you, Stephen.
Oh, sure.